Alright, so Evil Dead Rise has come out, and the plot for it is pretty much this: a twisted tale of two estranged sisters whose reunion is cut short by the rise of flesh-possessing demons, thrusting them into primal battle for survival as they face the most nightmarish version of family imaginable. Alright, let's get into the good parts of this movie, and the first thing I'm going to say is the camera work. First of all, I know Sam Raimi is not in this movie, but a lot of the shots and camera work it just felt like a Sam Raimi movie, but it's actually directed by Lee Cronin, and honestly, he did an amazing job with the camera work because it's some of the best that I've seen all year. Another thing that I liked about this movie is the performances. All of the kids are really great in this movie, especially the youngest one. I thought that she was very charismatic. But the performance that I liked the most was Alyssa Sutherland as the mother in this movie, and especially when she becomes possessed, you can tell that she's having the time of her life with this role, and her as a possessed demon was really terrifying, and she's actually very dark with her humor in this movie, and I kind of laughed at times, and I found that pretty interesting just because this movie's very serious, but then we have little moments that she does in this movie that kind of relieve the tension. The next thing that I liked about this movie is that it does not hold back. This movie is filled with teenagers, or has like 3 to 5 teenagers, and you would think that this movie would try to protect them and give them plot armor. It does not do that at all. Like literally, I'm not going to say who dies in this movie, but literally no one is safe. From like the 7-year-old to the 37-year-old in this movie. Another thing that I liked about this movie is the humor. Like I said prior, the mother in this movie has some pretty dark humor, and the movie in general, once stuff starts going down, it does have a lot of black humor. There's a scene in this movie that is homage to the Three Stooges and Evil Dead 2, if you caught that. But the humor doesn't always work for me just because, all of this crazy messed up stuff is happening with this serious tone. And sometimes when the humor is dropped in, it just kind of feels like it came out of nowhere. And it's kind of hard for these characters, for me to believe that they would be cracking jokes when their mother is possessed and hanging on a wall. The last thing I'll say that I liked before I get into my criticisms is the change of scenery. All of the Evil Dead movies, for the most part, aside from like the first one and the remake, have had a change of scenery. The second one was kind of the same as the first one, but with new characters and more like mythical elements. Evil Dead 3 was with, it was pretty much like a fantasy comedy. And then the remake was pretty much the same as the first one, but with teenagers and I believe something with drug abuse. I haven't seen the remake, so I might be wrong on that one. And this one is probably the most different out of all of the Evil Dead movies because it's actually in like some apartment building and, there's earthquakes happening. It changes the dynamic as well between the characters, where Evil Dead 1 was like with teenagers, and same thing with the remake, and then Evil Dead 2 and 3 was just following Ash and him being dumb and killing deadites. Same thing with the show, but it also has, Pablo and Kelly and all those great characters. This one changes, the dynamics between like the relationships completely, with having the mother against her kids and aunt, which I thought was really cool. And although I didn't think that they nailed some of the character stuff, it was really cool that they did that. Alright, let's get into some of my criticisms for this movie, and the first one is the characters. Listen, I'm not expecting this movie to have any iconic characters like Ash, but I feel like early on this movie was really trying to get me invested in these characters, but for me personally, I just wasn't able to latch on to all of the characters, and when bad stuff would happen to them, I just wouldn't care as much as I feel like the movie wanted me to. And also, the characters are just really dumb, specifically the teenagers. I mean, the reason why the whole movie even starts is because a certain character goes down someplace and, picks up something that he's not supposed to be picking up. And another instance is when a character is being baited into opening a door. And I understand the age of the character, so I'm not too mad about it. But at the same time, do you really think that a certain character is perfectly fine after everything that's happened to them? The next thing I'll say is that the movie's pacing is a bit too quick. Obviously, the Evil Dead movies have really quick pacing, but I think this one could have needed an extra 10 to 20 minutes because I know that this movie doesn't have a lot of fat to it, but I wish it kind of did because a lot of moments just felt like it went by a bit too quick for me. The last thing I'll say before I give my score is the fact that this movie is cliche, but it's not a bad thing. I think the movie, if you're expecting this movie to change horror movies, it's not going to do that. It buys everything from every other horror movie that you've seen, but it does it well enough that you're not mad about it. And overall, guys, I'm going to go ahead and give Evil Dead Rise a 6.75 out of 10. I didn't love this movie as much as everyone else has, but it seems like this movie is going to be doing very well in the box office. And if you've seen Evil Dead Rise, did you like it? Did you not like it? Let me know in the comments. And those are my thoughts on that.